case you are going to hear this evening is about broken trust. Tonight, the evidence will show that on December 10th, 2010, the plaintiff, Mr. George O'Malley, went to the hospital with a broken neck. And Dr. Burke, the defendant, and the staff of Flory Grace Medical Center failed to diagnose that broken neck. Now, ladies and gentlemen, when Mr. O'Malley went to the hospital on December 10th, he didn't know that he had a broken neck. Instead, he trusted Dr. Burke and the staff of Flory Grace Medical Center, much the same way anyone trusts the hospital. Anybody trusts a doctor. He trusted them to figure out what was wrong with him and to fix it. Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence tonight will show that instead of diagnosing Mr. O'Malley's broken neck, the staff of Flory Grace Medical Center sent him home with a neck that was broken in two places. Now, because of that, Mr. O'Malley has brought this medical malpractice lawsuit that you are here to listen to today. At the end of the case, the judge is going to instruct you on the law, and when he does, he's going to tell you that Mr. O'Malley, the plaintiff, bears the burden of proof. What that means is that at the end of the day today, if we take all the legal jargon and set it aside, Mr. O'Malley must convince you of four things. After you've heard all the evidence today, you must believe more likely than not first, that Dr. Burke had a duty, an expectation, if you will, that we have here in Flory Parish, that our doctors behave a certain way when they're presented with a situation like the one Dr. Burke was in on December 10th, 2010. Second, Mr. O'Malley will prove to you today that Dr. Burke failed to live up to that expectation. The third thing that Mr. O'Malley will prove is that Dr. Burke's failure caused an injury to Mr. O'Malley. And finally, we will prove to you exactly what that injury was. Now, in order to meet our burden of proof here today, we will call two witnesses. First, you will hear from Mr. George O'Malley. Now, when he takes the stand today, he's going to tell you that on December 10th, 2010, he was on his way home from a pickup basketball game at church, that it was raining, and that his car suddenly hydroplaned off the road, flipped upside down, and landed on its roof on the levee by the river. You're going to learn today that emergency medical personnel had to cut Mr. O'Malley free of that car, that they put a collar around his neck, they strapped him to a backboard, and they took him to Flory Grace Medical Center, into the waiting hands of Dr. Preston Burke, the defendant in this case. Now, when Mr. O'Malley testifies today, ladies and gentlemen, he's going to tell you that Dr. Burke never told him that his neck was broken in two places. That Dr. Burke never took an x-ray of his neck. Instead, Dr. Burke sent him home. Mr. O'Malley will tell you that over the next 12 to 18 hours, his neck started to hurt worse and worse, until finally he could barely move it from side to side. At that point, Mr. O'Malley and his wife rushed to the hospital. Fortunately, they went to Mercy West Hospital, where they met Dr. Chris Yang. And that's where the second half of the plaintiff's story picks up today, because you will have the opportunity to hear from Dr. Chris Yang. When Dr. Yang takes the stand today, he's going to tell you about how he met Mr. O'Malley, and about how, after he learned that Mr. O'Malley had been in a car accident, he almost instantly suspected that Mr. O'Malley had a broken neck. You're going to get the opportunity to see the x-ray that Dr. Yang took of Mr. O'Malley's neck. You're going to see for yourself that Mr. O'Malley's neck was broken in two places. And finally, Dr. Yang is going to tell you that because of the failures of Dr. Burke, Mr. O'Malley is going to be partially paralyzed for the rest of his life. Now, after the plaintiffs present their evidence today, the defense will have the opportunity to call some witnesses. They've indicated they're going to call Dr. Burke, the defendant, as well as Jackie Ava, Mr. O'Malley's employee. Now, I can't promise you what those witnesses are going to say, but I ask that you listen very carefully when they talk to you today. Listen very carefully to hear if either of the defense witnesses are able to tell you that Mr. O'Malley didn't have a broken neck. Listen to hear if the defense offers any testimony to refute the fact that Dr. Burke failed to to diagnose that broken neck. Listen to hear if the defense offers any testimony to refute the fact that Mr. O'Malley is going to be paralyzed for the rest of his life. After you've heard all the evidence here today, my co-counsel will stand before you in closing argument. He's going to ask that you find Dr. Burke liable for Mr. O'Malley's injuries. Thank you.